Tonight I'm going to talk about how to build a website, but I won't do that until 7 o'clock. Prior to that time, we have question and answers. And does anyone have any questions? No questions? Gene, you're silenced. You're muted. Aha. Now
I
you're
don't,
unmuted.
yeah, I don't see all of the faces up above a full body. They're just kind of at the very top. I don't know if
Um,
it's my setting or what.
yeah, that's they changed the interface and I'm not quite sure how to do. Oh, up in the upper right-hand corner, there should be something that says view, and you can
Okay.
choose whether to see a gallery view or a speaker view or a combination.
What should I pick?
Whatever is comfortable for you. If you have a speaker view and there are a bunch of people, it jumps around a lot. A lot of people don't like that. So a lot of people will have it in gallery view until there's a presentation in which they'll turn it to speaker view.
Okay.
You can also just focus on just one person and it'll not pay attention to anybody else. Anyway, any questions you have? Because if you don't have questions, I always have questions.
A
And my first question is, Gene, what kind of computer do you have?
Mac.
What kind?
Uh, I'm not sure that I know exactly what you mean by what kind.
How old is it?
I would say approximately 4 or 5 years old,
Okay.
maybe six.
All right, so that's going to be relevant later on tonight when I talk about, actually in a few minutes when I start talking about what Apple was discussing at the Worldwide Developer um, Conference. Darcy, do you know what kind of computer you have?
I have a Mac Mini that's about a year old, and I have a MacBook that,
Okay,
oh no, MacBook Air that's fairly new as well.
okay. Paul, do you know what you have? Paul is silenced, so he has his hand up, but I can't see him and he's muted. And Kathy is also muted, and I can't see her either. Anyway, um, while awaiting responses to that, on May 15th, Apple introduced two new iPads. And I know a lot of people don't have iPads, but they're really quite powerful devices. You can do a lot of things with them that you can do with a laptop. They're not a one-to-one replacement. But on May 15th, Apple introduced a new iPad Air in both 11-inch and 13-inch models. And what's different is that they have an M2 processor. This is the same kind of processor that they have in a lot of MacBooks. So it's a very powerful processor a for a portable device, battery-powered device. And they also introduced new iPad Pros in 11 and 13-inch models. They have an OLED screen, which is a very high resolution, incredibly crisp screen, which is significant. And they also came with M3 and M4 processors. Apple currently doesn't even have any Macs with an M4 processor, so it's a very powerful processor. And the reason why I think these are significant, aside from the fact they're new iPads and they're very powerful, is the M2, the M3, and the M4 processors also all have a significant amount of neural processors built into the machine. A neural processor is a little bit different than a lot of the processors people have in traditional computers. Traditional computers have a CPU. It's the part that adds, subtracts, multiplies, and divides. They might have a graphics processor, which controls the screen and things that you see. And then they have RAM and things like that. But a neural processor looks for things that traditionally cannot be done by computers. And people refer to it as artificial intelligence, but really it means that they can take a bunch of data and do things with it that doesn't follow in the normal scheme of add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Neural processing on the Mac right now, you use it all the time if you're using iPhotos. If you're using photos and you want to change the color of a background or get rid of spots on the screen or things like that, that's done with neural processing. It's not a simple math thing. The Mac will sit there and do comparisons of things around something so you can retouch things and it looks like you've done some really elegant design work, but really you just told the computer, touch that up or change the background color or a lot of other things like that. I did demonstrations of showing how you could cut somebody out of a background using iPhotos. And that's done with neural processing. On a computer, you've got a full-fledged, Paul says he can't unmute. Nothing happens when I click unmute. Well, sorry about that, Paul. Don't know what to say about that. But neural processing is used for, you want to change somebody's hair color or something like that is the most common things that people use it for. It's also used in a lot of motion pictures, when you're doing video editing and the sound is too low and you want to boost it. That's not a simple add, subtract, multiply, divide. It uses neural processing to look at the data and make guesses as to how to change the data according to your will. And why this is significant is that last week, Apple had their Worldwide Developer Conference, which is a conference where they tell people who write programs for the Mac, for the iPhone, for the iPad, for Apple TV, for other things. They tell them about advances that they're making in software. And one of the advances is that starting in this fall, the new versions of iOS for the iPhone, iPad OS for iPads, Mac OS for the Mac, Watch OS, pretty much everything, they're going to add what they call Apple Intelligence. And Apple Intelligence will allow you to do artificial intelligence functions on your Mac, on your iPhone, on your iPad, whatnot. And that's significant because it's going to be built into the apps themselves. So it'll be built into messages, it'll be built into mail, it'll be built into numbers, it'll be built into pages, it'll be built right into the applications themselves. And that's better than on most places. In most places right now, you can go to ChatGPT, which is a website. You can type things in and get back answers and things like that. But it's a separate process from things you normally do. And Apple wants to incorporate it right into things that you use right now, which is word processing, spreadsheets, photographs, video. It wants to build it into that. And if and when they can pull this off, that'll be a fantastic benefit. But reading between the lines, I believe that most of these new features are going to require that you have a machine that comes with an Apple Silicon processor, which means if you have an Intel-based Macintosh, I don't know if a lot of these capabilities will work. If you have an older iPhone, I don't know if they'll work. When they were mentioning during the sessions, specifically what they were talking about, they mentioned specifically the new iPhone 15, which has something called an A17 processor. and they mention Apple Silicon Macs and M1, M2, M3, M4 iPads. And that might mean that those are the only things that these technologies will work with, or it might mean that those are the only ones that you can get the full advantage of. The other thing that was interesting is that right now, if you use ChatGPT, you take your personal information, you send it up to ChatGPT, which does whatever they want to, including retain the information, and then it sends you back the results. Apple will try as much as possible to have all of this work done on your machine. So it'll be done on your Mac, on your iPhone, on your iPad, and which is significant because that hugely protects your privacy and security. And when it does require something that requires going out to Apple, they are introducing something called private cloud compute, which means that you'll do something that you want, like change a ceiling color or whatever it is that you happen to be doing something that you want. Apple will only send the information necessary to perform that task and send it back to you. And when it sends it to Apple, it's de-identified. It's not associated with you. So you'll get something called a token, which is a little electronic address. It'll see that the request came from something else out there. It'll send it back, but it doesn't retain any of your personal information. And this is completely unlike what Microsoft or any other vendor has promised to do with artificial intelligence. So it may not get much of a headline, but I was quite excited about what they were talking about with the Apple Intelligence and how they were going to maintain individual privacy and security. This stuff won't come out until September, October. How polished it'll be at the start, I don't know. But I do think that if you have older machines, either it won't work at all on these older machines, or it'll work in a limited fashion. But they didn't really say one way or the other. The one thing that kind of caused me a certain amount of hesitation when I was listening to this is that none of the press was allowed to do a hands-on experiment with that, which says to me that they're still working on getting the bugs out of it. So I don't know exactly what that will what that means. The other thing that it just as a trivia, several months ago, my spouse, asked what I thought the next version of Mac OS would be called. And I jokingly said it would be called Sequoia, because Apple's been naming things for places in California. And when they said that the next version is going to be called Mac OS Sequoia, I thought that was quite funny. I'm not necessarily a great prophet, but at least this time I lucked out. So that's my spiel about recent development at Apple. I was impressed with the new iPads. The OLED screen should be visually should be quite stunning, and the new M3 and M4 processors will be a huge boost in terms of power. Plus, I was fascinated with what they're planning on doing with the new iOS 18, iPad OS 18, and Mac Sequoia. One thing that kind of a trivial thing that I happen to be I might be an historian by trade, but I spend a lot of time playing around with calculators. It's always annoyed me that the iPad did not come with a calculator. They're going to come up with a calculator for the iPad, and it's going to be really quite wild. You will be able to draw on the screen using the Apple Pencil, draw a formula, it'll solve it. So it'll take your handwritten note of a formula and be able to solve it. And if you have a variable means something that changes depending on other things. It will graph it in real time. So as you change the variable, it'll change the graph on screen, which you may not be a calculator geek, but I think that's going to be really quite cool. My dear spouse, who has a PhD and is quite a bit brighter than I am, thought it was really cool too. So you have two endorsements for having a visual calculator. Okay. Anybody have any questions since I've been talking? Nobody has any questions?
No. I don't know enough to ask a question.
Everybody knows enough to ask a question.
Do you have any information on the new watch, iWatch?
They did talk about the new watch, but it was basically in terms of healthcare enhancements, and I can't remember, was it called fitness? I can't remember. There's a new application they're going to have that takes a number of different health metrics and puts it into a pardon?
Dashboard.
Yeah, it'll put it into a dashboard so that a number of things that the watch currently does that you might have to look around for, it'll put it into one place. Sort of like the health function right now will take things like your heart rate and various blood tests and so on and so forth and puts it into one thing in the health app. This fitness app would do the same thing for a variety of fitness things. They spend a lot of time talking just about the fitness functions that are bundled with the Apple Watch. I know that Kathleen's been quite ill, and one of the things that she does every night is she makes sure that her watch is charged so that it'll keep track of her blood oxygen content during the night. She's having problems with just having a healthy blood oxygen, and it's not really something that a hospital would call medical grade, but we were checking it against what the machines that the hospital has, and it's really quite accurate. And that is the health functions and the fitness functions, the Apple Watch, are really quite astounding. My watch, sometime during this meeting today, is going to tell me to stand up, for example. It can tell if you've been sitting down too long and tells you to, get up and move and things like that. So most of the watch presentation was focused on that. There is a rumor that there's going to be a larger watch face, probably not because people necessarily wanted a larger watch, but because so much information was being stuck on the watch that people are having trouble reading it. But that's just a rumor. They did spend a lot of time talking about the watch, but it was mostly on fitness and health.
Was there something on the 10 that was controversial or didn't work right? I have a 5 and I need to upgrade because it's not keeping power very long. And I'm wondering if I need to wait for the 11.
Well, it's going to be a 10. The
Or
current
10.
one, yeah, the current one is the 9. The big controversy with the 9 is that there's a federal court in Texas that when people want to sue for copyright violations or patent violations, they go to this tiny little court in Texas, to a tiny little town in Texas. An estimated 20% of the population of the town has been involved in patent and trade mark disputes. And the reason for that is that people get paid to be on the court, and there's no employment in the town, so people go and they get on these juries. And that court ruled that Apple was violating the patent of a company that was getting blood oxygen readings, and said that it was a violation of their patent, and some of the functions were taken away on the Watch 9. I have a Watch 9. I bought it earlier. I still have those functions, but if you bought it later on, it didn't have those. It didn't have a couple functions. It was a fairly minor thing, but it really, really, really torqued off a lot of people. With the 10, that was the only controversy I'm aware of involving the 9. Would you wait for the 10? simply because it's not that far away. They'll probably release it in September, October.
Okay.
If I was buying one, I'd probably wait until then.
Okay, thank you.
So will you lose your blood oxygen function then when you update iOS 18? Do you know?
I don't know because I don't, what I read about the dispute, Apple is using light to measure the blood oxygen. There's a light that shines on the back of the watch. You can't see it when you're wearing it, but there's a light that shines on the back of the watch and it can look at the capillary flow and estimate your blood oxygen. But that's used by a whole bunch of other people. They went after the Apple Watch because it's popular and most of the other watches are not. So, watches and fitness functions. So how that plays out between now and September, I don't know. Well, will I lose that function in the new Watch 10? I don't know. Will Apple be able to replicate it in a new way without changing out the hardware? I don't know that. Apple suffered from similar things. When Apple came up with QuickTime, QuickTime is the technology behind the video that you see on the Mac. When Apple came up with QuickTime in like 1992, 1993, I don't remember what it was. It might have been earlier than that. Real Video claimed that it violated their patent. You might, if you really old, remember that there used to be something called Real Video. It wasn't very good, and they went to court and they got absolutely hammered because Apple used a completely different process, and the long-term effect of that was that Real Video doesn't exist anymore. It was their technology was, among other things. I am frozen. Why am I frozen?
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, but I was waiting for you to finish.
Huh. Well, I don't know why I'm frozen because I don't think I'm frozen. I don't know.
We can hear you fine, just can't see it. Can't see you moving.
Yeah, I don't think so because Kathleen suggested it might be bandwidth. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen and see if that toggles it into waking up.
Yeah, that worked.
Okay. Going to, don't know how to tell it to stop sharing. Red. Oh, stop share. Okay.
Now you
Now,
left the party.
now I don't exist at all. This is a really interesting question. Yeah, Kathleen points out that huh, I don't think there's anything wrong with my camera.
How about did you stop sharing your video? Because there is an option for that.
Yeah, but I didn't touch anything down here.
Huh.
All right, I'll turn off the video and I'll turn on the video and there I am.
There we go.
Okay, I didn't do anything with it. It apparently just got stuck. This is a new version of Zoom. If you're using Zoom 6, and they've made a lot of changes. And there are also completely new bugs, and that's probably one of them. I forgot what I was talking about.
You just finished up talking about the maybe losing the blood oxygen thing.
Yeah, I don't really know about that. I'm not terribly concerned about that because, pardon? Yeah, Miss Kathleen says they'll find another way. Oh, with QuickTime. Real Video was, among other things, copy protected, and people hated that. So when Real Video lost their suit, not too many people were upset. Another company tried to say that they were responsible for the Siri voice. Apple bought the company that created Siri. It wasn't actually created by Apple. Apple bought the company and nobody cared until Apple started putting on the Macs. And then a company that was trying to sell artificial speech on the Mac for other computers, sued Apple. So this is the sort of thing that happens all the time. It was a real surprise that Apple lost that suit because the technology that Apple is using for the watch is widely used by other people. So I don't know why they lost, but the court said that they had to take it off of new Apple Watch 9s, and what happens with Apple Watch 10, I don't know. I don't, I can't offer a thought there. I'm an historian. Historians are known to be brilliant because we get to look with ex post facto knowledge. Predicting the future, we're not so great on. Any other questions? As I said at the start, I do believe that that the new iOS, the artificial Apple intelligence that they're going to have on iOS 18, iPad 18, macOS Sonoma, etc. I think it's probably going to require neural processing on the device, which means it's going to be the current iPhone and Mac silicon-based iPads and Macs themselves. But I don't know yet. It has been suggested that anything that has a T2 chip, and several of the late Intel model machines have a T2 chip, it has a neural processor on it. On a Mac, the T2 chip is done for neural processing as well. And it's used, for example, if you have Apple keyboard has a fingerprint reader on it, or if you have a camera that does that does facial recognition, that's done with the neural processing unit. So it might be that if you have a T2 chip, that might be all you need. I don't know yet.
The article. Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that the article that I read today from CNET said that the iPhone 15 it will not work on, but the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro Max it will.
That doesn't make too much sense because they all have the same processor. The 15 Pro and Pro Max, they have additional camera functions, but in terms of the basic CPU, which has the neural processor built in, there's not that's not a difference. So I don't know.
Yeah, that as soon as I saw that it did support my 15 Pro, I stopped reading. Shame on me.
Anyway, I'm going to start the meeting. I wanted to ask our treasurer, who he did pop up here for a second. I was going to ask her if she had anything to say. I don't see her right this second.
I just saw her.
Here.
Oh, there you are. She's probably going to tell you that I spent a lot of money, but
Well, the check didn't clear yet, though.
I know it's sitting on my table. I've had a very busy week.
Okay, no problem. Well, the balance right now, what we have in our account is $2,466.93, but it will go down by $550.30, and that is for Zoom. Lawrence could probably explain it better than I can.
Yeah, it's for our Zoom license, the website, and the domain name for the website.
Right. So all together for a year came to $550.30. So that is not deducted yet by the $2,466.93. So
yeah,
that's all I have to say.
Any questions? We're going to talk about how to build a website. And oh, you have a question, Chris?
The link to sign in.
Oh, I didn't make one.
Oh,
Oh, Kathleen asked me several times, did you make a sign-in sheet? And
I'll take names.
okay, why
I'll take names and send them to you.
that would be most helpful.
Mm.
Um, I was a bad boy. I wanted to talk about how to make a website because websites have become they originally started off as a fad. I used to work for NOAA, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I worked for National Ocean Service, and National Ocean Service runs the GPS navigation system, produces nautical charts and graphs, keeps track of tides and currents, sea surface temperatures, and a whole bunch of other environmental things, runs the National Marine Sanctuary, the Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary in Port Angeles is actually run by National Ocean Service. A whole bunch of things are done by National Ocean Service. They make all the nautical charts and such for the United States. And they also make the maps for airports, which I will not explain how or why National Ocean Service does that, but you know, government's strange sometimes. And we were always very frustrated because National Ocean Service is headquartered in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is 190 miles from the ocean. So we have all these oceanographers stuck 190 miles from the ocean. We were always very frustrated. But in the process of 26 years, I probably built or helped design or whatever about 2,000 websites. And when I started off, the technology was quite primitive. I actually wrote the software for the first web server that National Ocean Service used. I had some descriptions that I got of the first web server done by a guy named who's now a British knight. He worked for CERN, which is the big scientific agency that has the Super Hadron Collider, and it's in France and Germany and Switzerland. It's kind of scattered between them. And he was a British scientist, and he came up with the idea. And the first public web server went online in December 1991. It was only used by the people at CERN. And by 1993, I had written my own software to replicate what he did, to create a web server for National Ocean Service. And at the time, the internet was pretty much restricted to scientific institutions, the military, US military and NATO military, and some defense contractors. And that was pretty much it. Does anyone want to guess the first computer company in the United States to have a domain name on the internet?
IBM?
Nope. Apple.
Really?
Apple had their own apple.com domain name long before pretty much anybody else did. Microsoft didn't get around to it until like 1993, 1994. Apple started in the 1970s with a domain name. The internet technically didn't exist until January 1st, 1970, as a piece of trivia. But Apple had a apple.com domain name in late 1970s. And I really can't say that they had any great forward insight, except to note that when the Macintosh was released in January of 1984, it was the very first personal computer ever to come with built-in networking. It didn't use Ethernet, which is what most computers use today. Used something called local talk that ran over telephone wires. And every single Mac ever sold has come built in with networking. The Windows operating system didn't even have built-in software for networking until Windows 95, which obviously was in 1995, many, many years later. So Apple's been in the internet game for quite a bit. And the World Wide Web, when it came into being, was again restricted mostly to universities and defense contractors and national governments and so on and so forth. When people say that that Al Gore falsely claims credit for the internet. No, in a real sense, he is responsible for the commercial internet. Al Gore lobbied for and pushed through the legislation that allowed for the commercial internet that we know today. That was Al Gore's baby. But prior to that time, it was basically just colleges and government organizations and so on and so forth. And I had some of the very first websites. And at the time, you had to write a website using a bunch of code. And what I'm going to do today is show you how to make a site using nothing more than a browser. Well, a little more than a browser. And so I'm going to show my screen if I can figure out where the control for that is now. They moved it down here. That's interesting. Once I'm sharing my screen, it's up at the top. But when I first set it out, it's down at the bottom. And I don't need you. And I don't need you. So I'm going to launch a web browser. And I'm going to do something called, I'm going to open up a private window. A private window means that the computer doesn't really know who the heck I am, which is important for what I'm doing. I'm going to go to wordpress.com. The Smug site is done on a piece of software called WordPress. And WordPress is basically, it's a toolkit for building a website. And it makes it very easy. All you need is a web browser. So I went to WordPress.com and I already have an account on this, but I'm going to show you kind of what their pricing plan is. You can set up a site for free, or you can have a starter plan for $4 and explorer plans and so on and so forth. This is a monthly rate for setting up a website. And what we have is Washington for our user group has, I think, an Explorer account. Or it could be I don't know if it's the Explorer or the Creator. It's one of these plans. We get a discount because we already exist. But I want to show you what happens if you have a free account. And we're not going to do that. We're going to use Peter Lyon, my fake person. It's got security here to make sure that somebody doesn't do evil things. And it's got even more security. Because we don't want somebody to steal the account of my fake person. Log in now, which is what I wanted to do several screens ago. Okay. Peter's going to add a new website. And we don't own a domain. So we're going to call it Peter Lyon. And we're going to have Peter Lyon at WordPress.com. A whole bunch of choices here that they'll charge you money for. But this Peter Lyon WordPress.com is what we're going to use because that's free. And I want to show you how to make a website. I don't want to actually spend any money. So we say continue, and then it says, what do we want? It gives us another chance to spend money. We say continue on with free. And then it says, what do we want to do? Do we want to promote myself or my business? Sure, we want to do that. And say continue and choose a theme. And it's got different themes. Now, a theme is basically a set of templates showing how things are presented on a page. And I haven't actually looked at these. So let's, I'm going to try this one here. Don't know anything about it, but we're going to select that one. And going to say, oh, does this one cost money? Some of these things cost money. Oh, yes, that one costs money. So let's not do that one. Let's take this one, which does not cost money. And what kind of style do we have? I kind of like blue. So I'm going to take this one and say, continue. No, I don't want to spend money. So as you might guess, they really want you to spend money, but I want to show you that you can set up a website for free. So we're going to go with free. And it's sitting there, and what it's doing now is it's installing the template that allows me to sit here and do interesting things. And it wants to, what does it say, skip for now? I have no idea what skip for now is. I want to go back. Choose a plan, write your first post, edit site design. That's what I want. Let's do that thing. I'm going to skip the tour. And this is basically a default kind of style. So you can have the site title we want to say, I don't want to type in the middle of that. Peter Lyon Enterprises, and we're going to have an about screen. So let's go to the about page. Oh, is this the about page? I can't really tell. All right, pages. What pages do we have? So far we have an about page. Okay, about. And I have pre-written a lot of this stuff, so I don't have to type it in. And there's a space here for a photograph, so we're going to drag Peter Lyon's photograph up there. That's Peter Lyon.
I wonder what he looked like.
Actually, if you get messages from Peter Lyon, it's got his name on it. And this is stuff that we're going to have about Peter Lyon. Now, you'll notice that I just pasted in a bunch of text. And I knew one of the things that you'll notice about things is you like to have things like headlines and so on and so forth. That was the wrong thing. That was Peter Lyon Enterprises, and I didn't want that. I wanted Peter Lyon's biography, which is a different, okay, this is Peter Lyon's biography. So I got to select all this stuff that I just typed in and replace it with other stuff. Peter Lyon. This is the guy's name. It's the part of his site that is important. So I'm going to change it right now. It says it's a paragraph. When I highlight it, see this came up with this little menu here, and it says that that's a paragraph. That's a paragraph symbol. I click on it, and it says I want it to be a heading. I can choose different size of headings, H1, H2, H3, H4, H1 is big, H2 is smaller, H3 is smaller still, H6 is really tiny. We want this to be an H2 because this is the main heading for the page. And his nationality, let's make that a heading 2. We're going to make that H4. So you'll notice that the Peter Lyon, his name is big, the nationality is smaller. We want this we want these next two to also be H4, so I can select them both at once. Say heading H4, and it formats them. Now, in addition to the fact that it may change the size, the other thing to note about headings, the websites, all websites are indexed. They're indexed by Bing, they're indexed by Google, and a bunch of other search engines. When you make something an H1, you are saying this is the most important thing on the page. This title up here, that's an H1. You don't have to know what H1 means. You just have to know that it's an H1. It's a heading 1. It's the most important thing on the page. The second thing, most important thing on the page is going to be H2, then H3s, then H4s. And then the body text down here has importance, but not as much. When you're making a website, you want to think about what is important and you want to emphasize things that are important. You're not emphasizing it for typography. You're emphasizing it so that Google knows that Peter Lyon is something that should be indexed by itself because that's all that's on that line. So index it by itself. Whereas this paragraph is a whole bunch of stuff and it'll index individual pieces of it. So we're going to say that, Peter Lyon, he knows these languages, his early life. Come down here to education. This again needs to be a heading. So we come and we say that that's H4. And this is a link to a map. And we're going to, you'll notice that I happen to know that this is a link, and I happen to know that it's to a map. But in order to make this a map link that shows as a link, this little icon here is the icon to say this is a link. So I click that, and it's underlined now. And so it knows that it's a link. And down here for career, that's another heading. So we click that, and we say that's a H4. And personal life and legacy, click on that, make that an H4, and that's pretty much it. So Peter Lyon, he has a career, there's a bunch of stuff there. I want to save this now, and so I press the save button, and it's saved. And once it's saved, I can, among other things, actually see what it looks like. And I'm not going to do that right this second, but it is, it should look pretty much like this when I published it. And so now if I go back here to my site, it says that I have an about page. Well, I want to add a new page. And this is going to be Peter Lyon Enterprises. Create. And it says Peter Lyon Enterprises. Peter Lyon Enterprises is that thing that I typed in earlier that is all about Peter Lyon Enterprises. I come down here to this block and I paste that in, and it tells me all about Peter Lyon Enterprises. And we make that a heading. And we're going to make that a H3 this time. Things that Peter Lyon Enterprises does. They have a bison repair and maintenance division that they repair bison. Peter Lyon Dining, and we're going to make that a H3. And Peter Lyon Space Alien Travel and Accommodation is another thing that they do. Make that an H3. Peter Lyon Space Lasers, which is a new endeavor that they are getting into. Make that an H3. And And this is just kind of a promo paragraph. Make that an H3. And so here we have Peter Lyon Enterprises, Bison Repair and Maintenance, Peter Lyon Dining, Peter Lyon Space Alien Travel and Accommodation Services, Peter Lyon Space Lasers, and then just foundational services for a modern world, because who, of course, doesn't want, bison repair? And there's a space for a photograph. Okay, so let's take a photograph. We happen to have a photograph, looks like this. That is the Peter Lyon Enterprises headquarters in downtown Seattle. I'm sure when you come in on the ferry dock, you can see it there right on the waterfront. And we're going to drag that up and we're going to put it here. And so now we have a page all about the company, Peter Lyon Enterprises. And we think that's a good start here. So we say save. And so I've got two things now that say that they're about. Why do I have two things that say they're about? I have no idea. I'm going to go back up here and say all pages. There's an about page and there's a Peter Lyon Enterprises page. And we want to add a new page, and we're going to make this one about their bison repair business. Kind of a long name. Say create Peter Lyon Bison Repair and Maintenance. And we're going to start off this time with a photograph of what bison repair and maintenance is. So here we have a photograph of the bison repair and maintenance and what they do. We're going to have a bunch of things that we throw in here because, they do a lot of things with bison repair and maintenance. Pricing, that's a heading. We want that to be H2. Well, I'll leave that as an H2. And we're going to make this basic services an H3. That's basic services. H3, and you're going to be an H2 up here. Basic true services, and I'm not exactly sure. I've selected 3 paragraphs here. Oil change includes filter replacement and so on and so forth. And we're going to make this oil change. That is something that is important. That's oil change is $1,000. Shoe rotation 800, rotating and balancing of all 4 shoes. Advanced services, we're going to have a new heading for that. H3. Specialized services down here. And my watch keeps on telling me that I haven't taken my pills yet. Emergency services, H3. Maintenance packages, H3. Miscellaneous, H3. And this thing down here is just basically talking about for more information and telling you to go there. So we have bison repair with various and sundry things that you can do. One of the things that isn't obvious is that so far these are just paragraphs, but you can actually turn these into a different kinds of things. Like, so I come up here for basic services. I can click on this and say instead of basic paragraphs, that's actually a list. And now it turns these into bullet points. And that's a bullet point. And this one here, I want to indent this one. And it's not going to let me do that. Anyway, so those are bullet points. And we're going to make these bullet points and these bullet points. Bullet points. Bullet points. So that gives us another page that we have now. Now, if I go back out here, I now have 3 pages. Peter Lyon, about Peter Lyon, Peter Lyon services, and Peter Lyon repair, and that looks fairly good. Let's go to see what these actually look like, though. I'm going to go to Peter Lyon services, and I say view page. This is going to be what the this is a premium style. I do not want a premium style. Okay, go back here then. Ugh. I don't go back here. Yeah, for now. Upgrades free. Appearance. That is not a premium style. Anyway. This is the home page that the template selected, which is not really what I wanted. I'm pretending that this is the home page, and I do not want to remove premium styles. This is the about page. It's not letting me just click on the about. My demo is not going well because I'm not used to using a free package, and so it's being. I did this demo for myself at home a couple weeks ago, and it worked fine, but they made some changes. Remove premium styles. I specifically did not pick a premium style. Oh, well, I'm going to temporarily abandon this and show you the smug site, which is much more comprehensive and has more options. If you look at the number of pages on the site, there are quite a few pages. If you look at the number of posts that we have on the page on the site, there are quite a few posts. But this also costs more money. Some things to note that are different. If we go to the Smug site, it's among other things, it has its own custom name. It's strait.mac.org. So that's important. The Peter Lyon site is Peter Lyon at wordpress.com. So it's not its own site. If you went looking for Peter Lyon Enterprises, it'd be very difficult to find because it doesn't have its own name. The name costs extra. That's where the starter plan starts off at $4 per month. And you can get a discount when you start up and so on and so forth. Ours costs, I don't know, $200 a year, something like that. I don't remember exactly how much it was. So it wasn't that much. I don't remember how much it costs. It does cost more money in order to have our own custom domain. We also are allowed to have a much larger selection of themes. The theme that I had, which is the basic templates, didn't cost us anything, but I could pick from a wide variety of free themes, whereas the Peter Lyon site does not. But in terms of the basics, how you create a page, it's pretty much the same. You put text in there, and then you can make various changes to that text. It's all just starts off as text. There's really nothing on a page other than text. So this is just text. I know that I stuck a photograph in here someplace. Apparently it trashed my photograph. Or maybe it's not going to, I don't know. Remove premium styles. I don't want to do that. It's giving me an ad. This worked fine a couple weeks ago. What can I say? And it should not require anything more. One other thing I wanted to show you, though, before I get completely off kilter, is how to link things. I have this Bison page, but there's no way to get to the Bison's page. And you do that by clicking this link, and you say, pick what you want. I want Bison repair. So now it's underlined, because by clicking on that link, it'll take me to that other page that I made. And I had a bunch of other scripts that I can do. One of the things that is worth noting is that you're not limited in terms of what cancel, save. You're not limited to what languages you use. For example, I can say I want to add a new page, and I'm going to have add a page. Just a page. And this is going to be a Chinese menu of the Chinese restaurant. And what happened to my, oh, there it is. There's my Chinese menu. And this is for, why are you doing that? Okay. It just pasted Chinese in, and it's perfectly comfortable having Chinese on the page. Get rid of a bunch of other stuff, but I don't care about right now. And I can do things like replace this photograph with, and it thinks I'm doing this on a phone. That's kind of strange. Another way to do this. Stop. That's a picture of Peter Lyon's Chinese restaurant. And it's a Chinese restaurant that has their menu in Chinese, because why wouldn't it? And I go back to Peter Lyon Enterprises, and I come to my Chinese restaurant here, and I say I want a link, and I pick the Chinese restaurant, and I probably make it this a bigger thing now because it's got something going for it. Okay, I'm going to stop for a second here so I can talk to people. But I wanted to show you basically that you can make a website for free, in spite of the fact that he keeps on trying to sell me stuff. And all it really requires is a desire to say something and have an idea of what you want it to contain. It can contain video, it can contain pictures, it can contain text. A lot of the average length of a website on the internet is one page. The most popular websites on the internet are one page. The most popular websites on the internet in terms of just quantity are either vanity pages where some teenager just wants to talk about their bowling league, or restaurants and barber shops and so on and so forth. So the average restaurant ad, if you go to Golden Star or some of the other restaurants around here, there's a one-page website and it has their menu. Quite often they don't even have the text of the menu. Somebody has just put up photographs of the menu, which is not a great way to do it. It's better if you have text. One big problem with having a photograph of a menu instead of a text, if you go searching for wonton soup, it won't find the text on the photograph. It'll only find it if it's actually in the page itself. Because a photograph itself is just a photograph. And the photograph is probably named something like image 1894.jpg. So that doesn't tell you that someplace on that photograph there's wonton soup. So it's a mixture of text. It can have video, it can have photographs. You can change the font sizes. And the only thing I was using to do this was a web browser. Wasn't using anything else. So, in spite of the fact my demo didn't go quite the way I wanted, are there any questions?
How do you then publish the website, and where does that happen?
Once you have the pages the way you want, there's a button you press and it says make it public. Prior to this time, it's not public. It's just kind of, indeterminate state. When you say publish, it'll make it public. However, with the free one is going to be peter.lyon@wordpress.com. So it's going to have a nice long name, but it won't say peterlyon.com. Or in the case of the Strait Macintosh user group, ours is straightmac.org. Org is for nonprofits, comma for commercial things. My own private site that I have is kljccomputing.com. It's not really commercial, but that's my own private site. I also have one called nishiryu.org, which is, it's hard to explain why, but I have a lot of different websites just for myself. One of the things I used to do is I used to do computer security, and when I'd contact hackers about what the heck they were doing, I didn't want to use my government email address, so I always came across as Nishiryu. Nishiryu is Japanese. It means Western Dragon. I was born on the West Coast in the year of the dragon, so I'm Nishiryu. But I have websites for all of these things for various things that I do. I also run my work church website. I run the website for Washington Apple Pie, which is a big East Coast user group, as well as our own. I have about 20 websites. And when you press that publish button, if you're using the free plan, it's going to be whatever you name it, .wordpress.com. So it won't be your own address. If you want your own address, you have to go to one of those plans that you have to pay $4 or $8 or whatever per month. The additional fees allow you to do additional customization to your site without knowing any coding. Just additional things. There are things like on, I'll show you in a second, but you can have little plugins to WordPress to do things like our discussion board. Our discussion board is essentially a website within a website, and that's a plugin that we pay $80 a year or something like that in order to have that plugin piece of software that allows us to have a discussion board. You also get more space. The discussion site, believe it or not, uses up a fair amount of space. So I had to have a higher plan in order to support the discussions. And if you want to have a lot of photographs, you have to have a bigger plan because you're basically renting space on WordPress's computers. My own private site, I have something like 500 gigabytes worth of stuff, and that costs me like 100 and something a year. It's a much larger site than the Strait Mac user group site, but it's only for one person, and most of it is hand coded, so it's much harder to actually do that. But it's got things like my publications, things that I've written and things like that on it, plus photographs and such. But in terms of what you want it for, they're great for promoting business. They're great for promoting hobbies, for demonstrating your photographs. Recently, one of our friends that we've had for 45 years, she died, and I wanted to explain to her children what kind of photographs we were going to use in a memorial service. And rather than send things back and forth through email, I just created a page with the photographs and suggested captions and asked them what they wanted to do and had them in what order. And that way they could just go there with their browser and say, oh, could you move 13 up to 7? And could you change the caption here? And you misspelled my name and things like that. they could just look at it in a web browser. We didn't have to mail things back and forth to each other. Just a website is the other nice thing about a website is that if you're on a Mac and you have something that you're writing for someone and you want them to critique it and you send them a copy in Pages, and if they don't have a Mac, they can't read it. You can export it into Word, but then they'd have to have Word. And believe it or not, a whole bunch of Windows people do not have Word and don't have any way to read a Word document. So how do you get them to read something? If you put it up on a website, everybody with a web browser can read it. So there are lots of different uses. Pardon?
You created this with WordPress. So when you publish it, whether you're paying or not paying, is WordPress the host like GoDaddy?
Okay, that's an excellent question. WordPress is the piece of software. WordPress.com is the site where you can host WordPress sites, but my own personal one, kljccomputing.com, is hosted by a company called Bluehost. But GoDaddy does it too, and so on and so forth. I dealt with GoDaddy, and I will never, ever, ever spend money on GoDaddy. They're not nice people. But Bluehost is a company out of Utah. And where your site is physically located doesn't make any difference. Believe it or not, if you live on the Olympic Peninsula, it's a good idea not to have your website hosted on the Olympic Peninsula. Why?
Because our bandwidth is crummy.
Because our bandwidth is crummy. And if the wind blows down a transmission tower, your site is down. Whereas if your website is hosted in California or Utah or something, then it doesn't make any difference what's going on the peninsula.
Well, let's say you created it like you showed us tonight with WordPress. How do you move that to whatever? So that
that's
your host.
That's a good question. If you have a commercial plan, you can't do it with the free version, but with the commercial plan, it changes slightly the structure of the site, and you can then go to Bluehost and you can say, suck the contents of my other site that I own and pull it onto this site. And it'll just go over the internet. It'll just take the contents of the site that's hosted on WordPress and move it to the one on Bluehost or GoDaddy or wherever it is. But you can't do that with the free plan because the free plan doesn't give you that degree of control. The free plan is free and it's worth every penny you pay for it. It's great for learning how a website works and for playing with it and decide if that's what you want to do. But in terms of doing something useful, no, it's too limited. And the biggest difference is it's not personalized. It's always going to say WordPress.com. It's never going to say Lawrence Charters or Steve or whatever else you want the site.
Well, suppose you used it like you said, one-time deal to set up photographs and text and so on for a memorial or a reunion or whatever. How do you delete it after that?
You just go up there because you have it. It really is under your control. You just go on there and there's a button to say delete it. And in fact, the demonstration site that I had a couple weeks ago, after I made sure that everything worked, I pressed the delete button and it just deleted it. And I probably should have left it up there as an example, but what can I say? But no, you just delete it and it's gone. And if you don't pay for it, say if you have a commercial plan and it's due in July and you don't pay for it, it'll be gone then too. They'll send you a few done notices, but if you're not paying for it, they delete it.
Did you already talk about all the Apple AI stuff and announcements?
Yes, they did. But we have time. So are there any questions about websites? Okay. Go ahead and talk about AI. What's your question?
Yeah, well, I mean, there seems to be quite a bit of information that nobody really knows for sure exactly what anything is going to be like.
I have some definite opinions having watched the keynote addresses several of the keynote things. First of all, when they were talking about the technology, they made repeated reference to the iPhone 15, which has something in it called an A17 chip. And they made Apple Silicon machines. Why I think that's important is the A17 chip and the Apple Silicon chips have a neural processor on board. And if you're doing artificial intelligence is something that's not add, subtract, multiply, divide. Computers are really great at add, subtracting, multiply, and divide. But if you want to say, go through, there's a program I use called Grammarly that will sit there and correct it'll flag my spelling when I'm writing things on a web page, which is really comes in really handy because I type real fast and realize I dropped something. Grammarly is a form of artificial intelligence, but it looks at English language. How do you add, subtract, multiply, or divide verbs or adjectives, or know the difference between past tense, present tense, and future tense? You can't. That is called artificial intelligence, where you build up a body, you build up a database of rules, and then you use a neural processing engine to process those rules as rapidly as possible to see if that sentence you wrote is grammatically correct. That's what Grammarly does. Only Grammarly does it on their engine. So anytime you're using Grammarly, you're sending a copy of everything you're writing to Grammarly. So you're writing a ransom note to you're going to ransom some hospital records, and you write it using Grammarly to get your grammar correctly. You just sent a copy of your ransom note to Grammarly because that's how it works. Apple Intelligence does two things that are just hugely clever. One is they will use the neural processing engine as much as possible to do the artificial intelligence on your computer, on your phone, on your iPad, and not on the cloud someplace. And second thing, when the Apple Intelligence cannot all by itself do the task on your phone, it sends out a token to Apple with just the parts it needs to fulfill the question, and then it sends it back. Now, the fact that it's doing it means with a token means that it can't be traced, so your privacy is preserved. And Apple repeatedly emphasized this in their presentation. And that's hugely different. If you use ChatGPT, you're sending ChatGPT everything. So you want it to help polish your business plan or write the perfect letter to get you admitted into Harvard. They get a copy of it. And not only do they get a copy of it, they use it to improve their intelligence engine. So not only do they have a copy, they're using your property. Whereas Apple Intelligence is not doing that. And I think that's hugely important. Microsoft recently came up with this thing called Copilot, which is Microsoft's intelligence engine. And one of the things that they were promoting was that it would use something called recall to restore things that you lost on your machine, that it will automatically, anytime you write something to your computer, it would store it in recall. So if you want to pull it back later on, you could. And computer security experts said, wait a minute, that's a terrible idea. You essentially do that now with Time Machine, but when you're doing it with Time Machine, the place you're storing it is right in your own home. You're not sending it to Apple. And everyone told Apple, Microsoft, that was a terrible idea. And that whole recall thing lasted a week, and Microsoft ran up the white flag and said, nope, that's a terrible idea. We're not going to do that. What Apple is doing, though, they're doing the artificial intelligence either on your device, or if they have to, they're sending anonymous data to get the pieces that he needs help with, and then pull it back for you. And the things that they were showing were things like ways to improve photographs, ways to improve video, ways to correct things in spreadsheets and in word processing, and within things like messages. One of the new capabilities that Kathleen was really happy. Somebody sends you a message and saying, could you tell me when you're going to come? Are you going to come to the meeting tomorrow? And you don't really know. At that time, you don't have an answer, or you don't want to provide the answer because you're afraid you'll get pestered. You can say, send a response tomorrow at this time, and it'll send from Apple Messages, not from your email. It'll wait until that time to send your response, and it'll do it automatically. And do the same kind of things with email and things that it's just you want to send a response, but you don't want to send a response now, or you want to send a message, but you don't want to send it now. And you'll being able to save it up to a time and send it out later. Kathleen was just all over that, but it could also use Apple, the artificial intelligence. You can have animated emoji. You might remember a couple months ago, I was talking about artificial intelligence, and I did the entire presentation using a bunch of animated emojis where a giraffe was talking and a zebra was talking and so on and so forth. With the new iOS 18, you can create your own animated emoji. You're not stuck with the ones Apple provides. You can actually make your own, and that's being done with the artificial intelligence. So the kinds of things that they were thinking, I was excited about the fact that, hey, this is actually useful. You know, most people don't really need to have a artificial intelligence engine help them win a chess match against a grandmaster. That's not, you know, that's not something I need. But being able to create animated emojis to entertain my granddaughter in England, I'm all over that. That sounds pretty cool. And helping with your photo editing and so on and so forth. That's really quite cool. So I was impressed with the fact that they had thought about it in terms of how would people actually use this other than just as a selling point. I was really horrified with some ads on TV. They talk about we use artificial intelligence in our financial services. I don't want you to use artificial intelligence. I want some human that's going to be working with my money and be responsible. I don't want you to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, we lost all your money because of a bug." You know, they want some human to be responsible. And what Apple was doing, it struck me as being something useful by normal human beings. And I was impressed with that. And the fact that it's going to be incorporated in things that you already have. It's going to be incorporated into pages. It's going to be incorporated in numbers, photos, messages, email. That strikes me. It's not something that's bolted on and, hey, you figure it out. It's they were actually putting it to a specific purpose, and I was impressed with that. Plus the privacy and security things. They probably repeated the privacy and security stuff hundreds of times over the week, because everybody else is doing a really bad job of that. So Apple's going to use
Apparently it impressed more than just you, because Apple's stock went up considerably after that presentation.
Well, I'm impressed. I know several tech journalists who worked for the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post and some other publications, and we've been discussing this, and they were impressed on the one hand, but also somewhat skeptical. In the past, at these worldwide developer conferences, you got to play with the toys that they were developing, but there was no hands-on demo for the journalists. And I suspect that it's just not polished enough that they wanted good press. They didn't want, hey, I tried it and I broke it. That's not a good headline. Especially they had the example of Microsoft. Oh, we have this new feature, and then a week later say, no, we don't. No, we don't. I think they're trying to avoid that.
Well, didn't they say that a number of the AI features would roll out over the next year and a half, so that
yes,
we're not going to get it all at once?
They weren't going to get it all at once. The other thing that is a question for me is on what machines will it work? I think if you have a machine 3, 4, 5 years old, it's not going to work. If you have an Apple Silicon machine, they said, yes, if you have a Mac using Mac Silicon processor, yes, it'll work. With phones and iPads, it's a little bit iffier. If you have an M1 or M2 chip, absolutely. But older iPhones, it's not clear. the iPhone 10 was the first one that had that security chip inside of it with a neural processor, and they needed it for the facial recognition, so you can log into the phone just by looking at it. But the iPhone 10, while it might have that security feature and have a neural processing engine, I don't know that it has the RAM necessary, the free space necessary to do this. A lot of artificial intelligence uses up a fair amount of free space to sit there and turn like if you're editing a photo to make multiple copies of it so that it has an undo function and a bunch of other things when you're making mass manipulations, that takes a fair amount of space. And in some of the older phones, I don't know that it has things aside from the neural engine to support that. And I suspect it's also going to be kind of graduated on if you have this model, if you're it's sort of like the ball call. If you're this tall, you can do this. But if you're this tall, you can do more. But I don't know. I'm speculating at this point. I think
Actually, one of the things that, like you were saying, some of the announcements making the emojis or whatever they call them, making your own is a pretty cool feature. But also apparently they're going to add styled text finally to messages, so you can have italics and bold.
yes. And cross out and yes.
Yeah.
That set off alarm bells when I heard that, because the European Union has basically told Apple that they have to make the Google messaging compatible with Apple messaging, because the Google people are feeling inferiority complex when their messages show up as green, whereas Apple messages show up as blue. And so the European Union said, oh, you have to make it compatible. And Apple, okay, if they're going to make it compatible in Europe, they're also going to make it compatible in the United States. However, if they add things like styled text and crossouts and things like that, Google doesn't support that. So I'm wondering if this is, oh yeah, you're going to make us do that, huh? Okay, we'll just add these other things on.
Well, I read they're still going to keep them green. They're not going to give them the blue color unless you have an Apple device. So I wouldn't be surprised if all that fancy stuff only is for the Apple machines. I mean, why not?
It's one of the when you're trying to legislate compatibility between devices, you're running into some issues. Now, one thing that will happen, though, is that I expect all new iPhones and all new iPads to have USB-C connectors. Why? Because the European Union's requiring it. And not just of Apple, but of all mobile devices are going to require that they have a USB-C connector. So the older, larger USB-As are just going to go away. And iPhones and iPads and Macs are going to just standardize on USB-C, because it makes no sense to have them one way in the United States and a different way for the rest of the planet. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be the new standard. But when it comes to software, when I saw Apple talking about the style tests and messages, Kathleen and I both kind of thought, oh, that's cool. And I was also thinking, oh, that's going to really torque off Google.
What do you think is going to happen now that Apple has opened up satellite communication to regular messaging?
The answer is I don't know, because if you notice the way they phrased it, it's fairly limited. To explain what he's talking about, if you have an iPhone 15 and it has an emergency contact service where you can send out a message if you're in an emergency, it uses a specialized rescue satellite to send out messages. And Apple says that they're going to open that up for just messages as a whole. Among other things, I'm not sure that the emergency message, the satellite service can support that. So there might be some limitations. Apple was fairly careful about how they said that. So it may not actually mean much unless you happen to be stuck in a corner of the United States that has terrible cell service. And I just, theoretically, I'm sure such a place might exist. So it might be useful for those people. And the other thing to note is that we're in a bad place here because not only do we have poor cell service, we're also quite a bit above the equator. Your satellite connectivity is much better at the equator. Why? Because that's where the geosynchronous satellites are. They're at the equator. The farther north or farther south you go, the worse the satellite reception is. So exactly what that means for us, I'm not sure.
And it said it was supposed to be compatible with anybody with a phone. At least that's what the article that I read said.
Yeah, again,
that would be an article or a phone that has text capabilities.
yeah, I'm not sure what that means. Apple was very careful what they said about that, and I did not attend that technical talk. They might have gone into more detail, but I just don't know. I'm not getting my hopes up because, among other things, I am quite far north of the equator. When I'm talking to my daughter in the summertime, it'll be like 11 o'clock at night and it's bright sunlight pouring through the windows because England's even farther north than we are. So I'm not sure. Not sure what that means for people like us. I will find out. Any other questions?
Just one more about AI. When it sounds to me like one of the very helpful things that AI might do for computer users is to be able to tell them how to, if you say my computer is doing this or won't do that or something, it should be able to find Apple knowledge base articles or whatever to give them some indication of what to do. For example, I read today, somebody said, why? Oh, I think it was Alan X, Adam X and his tidbits. Why do my green bubbles or blue bubbles, whichever, on my phone suddenly look like they're emerald? Well, it had to do with some setting in accessibility that they had, increased the contrast or done something, So it might. Am I correct in thinking it might be a big help in troubleshooting issues on your machine or somebody else's machine?
The answer to that is I don't think so, for two reasons. First of all, if your machine really is not functioning well, asking a machine that's not functioning well to diagnose why it's not functioning well probably is not it's probably not going to have a good result. But the other one is that there's too much flexibility in human language. Artificial intelligence, one of the things that it's really good at right now is called natural language processing, where I can tell you, see that cat running down the street, and you can actually visualize, oh, there's a cat running down the street. You can interpret that, and you can parse the sentence so that you realize that I'm not running down the street, it's the cat running down the street. You can impart a lot of things to that. Computers are getting really good about that, but it requires a huge amount of processing power. The other thing is that in order to use that correctly, you have to kind of know what the vocabulary is that the artificial intelligence understands. As an example, I have an Apple TV. I can be in the kitchen and I can tell my TV to turn on. I have the prefix, I tell it the keyword, which is Siri, and then I explain it to it what it wanted to do. My particular TV is named Dungeness, and so I'll say, I'll use the keyword and they say, turn on Dungeness, and it turns on the Apple TV, which in turn turns on the TV. And then I discovered entirely by accident that I could say, launch YouTube TV, which is my television provider, and it launches the YouTube TV app on Dungeness. That's really nice, but it's not obvious how to do that. And there's really no way to come up with an article that could explain that, because your Apple TV is probably not called Dungeness. Probably nobody else's Apple TV is called Dungeness. So how would you tell it to launch this thing? Because Siri also, when I tell Siri to set the time, I have no idea sometimes if it's going to set the time on my watch, is it going to set it on my, set a timer? Is it going to set it on my watch? Is it going to set it on my computer? Is it going to set it on my Apple TV? Is it going to set it on our HomePod? Is it going to set it on Kathleen's watch? That artificial intelligence has some very strict limits simply based upon the vocabulary. So can it figure out what emerald green means in the context of Apple messages? And can it associate that with an accessibility setting? That's really pushing it. I have some doubts as to how good. If you listen to most people when I ask them, they say, I'm having problems with a Mac. What kind of Mac do you have? Oh, it's beige.
Yeah.
Now I can actually diagnose it. If they say it's beige, I can say, well, you're stuck because that's obsolete. but in practicality, it really doesn't tell me that much. And people are very poor about explaining, like I'd have people at work who say, my damn computer's just not working anymore. How is it not working? It's not doing anything I want. Well, it must be doing something because it's enough to frustrate them, but getting them to calm down enough to explain that to another intelligent human being sometimes takes a while. And is that going to work with artificial intelligence? I've seen that stated, and I have severe doubts. I'm willing to be proven wrong. That'd be nice. Any other questions from anyone? I apologize that my demo was not as good as it should have been, as it was 2 weeks ago. But I'm sorry. Sometimes it's like that. I was at a demonstration that Bill Gates gave when he was showing off. I think it was Windows XP. He was showing off Windows XP. And he's up on stage. And he's about 100 feet from me, and they boot Windows XP, and they immediately got a blue screen of death. It just died. It showed the logo, and then it died. And the look on his face was priceless. And there wasn't really anything he could do at that point. His whole presentation that he was going to spend an hour on just went down the tubes instantly. Any other questions? Any ideas on what you want to do next month?
Can we email them to you?
Yes, you can email them. Why don't you do that?
I know I asked this last time, but I can't remember what you said about in-person meetings.
Yes, I want to do that. I've been really pressed for time. And I have a specific thing that I want to do, but I just haven't had time to do any of the preparation for it. And so it may not happen until maybe September. If things go well, I am probably going to be gone for a couple of weeks in Europe in August to go to the World Science Fiction Convention in Glasgow. And I don't know if we're even going to have an August meeting, but there's also a chance that I won't be able to go. So I just don't know. But write to me with your suggestions on what we do next. I've had a bunch of suggestions for people that I might do. Like a couple of months ago, we had a whole bunch of short topics because there were topics that wouldn't take an entire meeting. We might be doing something like that, or if we have a more advanced media topic, we can go there. So
Okay.
Send in your suggestions. Okay.
Will do. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.